I am so happy to be here today with my friends Daree and Adam Blake. I met you a few years ago, Adam, when you were going through your education, and then had Jaden in my seminary class, and we have mutual friends. I'm so thankful that you would come and share your story, and I have not heard your story in its entirety before, so I'm excited that this will be a time of discovery for me as well. So, Daree, would you start by introducing yourself, your little bit of your background, and then Adam?
Sure. So I'm Daree Blake. I have 5 living children, and then I have had 4 losses. So my grief journey is long, and my journey to motherhood has been rough. But Adam and I have gotten through it together. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a birth and bereavement doula. I advocate for early learning and childcare. I'm very active talking with lawmakers and empowering other parents to share their stories.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I was not aware of the extent of your losses. Thank you. Adam.
Yeah, I'm Adam Blake. I'm the dad involved here, and been married with Daree for coming on 22 years, and so that's been fun. Currently, I own a couple small businesses and run and manage those, and through had that during the time that we're going to talk about Oliver and his loss and that major impact on our life today. So yeah.
Thank you so much again for being here and joining me. So tell me about Oliver.
Well, we decided we wanted to grow our family again after we had already had 3 children. Mm-hmm. And at our first ultrasound, we were like, let's make sure there's only 1 in here. And there were 2.
I used to joke and give her a hard time that she was going to have twins. And that stopped that immediately.
Yeah.
So, oh, yeah. The prediction came true.
It wasn't as funny anymore.
What was that like, discovering you were having twins?
It was scary and exciting. Yeah. It was really funny. The ultrasound tech put the wand on and she's like, well, I can't tell you there's one. I had a septate bicornuate uterus. And so
what does that mean?
It means that in my development, when I was growing in my mother's womb, my uterus did not open up into one piece. So there's a septum, usually it comes together and then that dissipates. Well, mine did not.
Okay.
And so my septum was almost complete. So that means it went almost the whole length of my uterus. And then I also had a heart shape at the top. So that's the bicornuate part. So all my babies kind of were in one horn. And then sometimes they weren't able to turn. So I had to have C-section for Jaden and
wow.
But
so you're just the fact that you're a mother is a modern miracle.
Yeah, I mean, some malleable anomalies make it harder to stay pregnant. If a baby implants on the septum, it's not good blood flow, and so it's not a good place. So even getting close to term with Connor, we were 38 weeks. 38 weeks with Connor, and he that was a miracle, and so that we got that far with me. So
wow. Okay, and so So, and then when you mentioned the 4 losses, besides Oliver, are you speaking about miscarriages?
Yeah, so I had 3 losses prior to Oliver.
Wow.
So our second pregnancy after Jaden, we lost the baby at 10 weeks. And so I had to have a DNC after that. And then I got pregnant right away. And at 11 weeks, 1 week longer, feeling a little confident, we found out that I was miscarrying again, and they told me that there was no hope for that pregnancy, but there was still a heartbeat.
Oh, wow.
So a few weeks later, we found out that I had miscarried a twin. And then, then Kira was born at 37 weeks.
She was the heartbeat.
She was the heartbeat.
Wow. Okay, so you I'm counting here. You have 2 sets of twins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Kira had been a twin. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
Connor came along, and he was probably the
So it was
easiest
it was before Connor. Before Connor. Actually, today is the anniversary of our third miscarriage. We found out at 9 weeks that our baby had passed at 6 weeks.
I'm so sorry.
So that was a hard time for us. And after that third loss, my OB was like, I think you need to recognize that your odds are pretty terrible. And, before you get pregnant again right away, because that's what I wanted to do, my sister was due the same day as me.
Oh my gosh.
So he encouraged us to grieve and figure out, heal a little bit and take some time to really mourn those losses because our odds were pretty terrible. And so we did. We took 3 months and kind of learned how to grieve a little bit. Kind of took time to really acknowledge those losses and how they affected us. And then we got pregnant with Connor, and he was my longest pregnancy. I would call it my only perfect birth.
Right.
And then we got pregnant with the twins after that. So with Oliver and Emma.
Okay. Thank you for taking us through the history there.
Yeah.
I want to put a pin on this conversation about Oliver. This is what we'll come back next to. But Adam, would you just address what your experience was being her husband, being the father of these children? How did that affect you? How did you deal with that?
I think it affects the dads a little bit differently. I think you can look at societal norms or whatever, but you as the father, you're supposed to be the rock. You're supposed to be the foundation of the family. And so keeping things going, and it's not like, for most fathers, it's not like we can easily take a bunch of time off work or anything like that. We still need to provide. We still need to go to work. We still need to take care of the family and the kids and help with the household, and in a lot of ways take on more because your spouse is out, or down for the count for a little bit. So in a lot of ways, it's a delayed to deal with it because you don't have necessarily the luxury to deal with it at the time. So I think it can be a longer drawn out process. Also society and norms and all of that, it's expressing those emotions or going to others. It's not, you don't get the empathy necessarily that the mother does. So it's a completely different way to process it. And I think that's where a lot of men will internalize it, and it can become bitterness, resentment, and so on. So you can't let that take over.
Did you experience those kinds of feelings? Did you have some bitterness or resentment at times?
Not really resentment in my case. And I think that has to do with, I think a lot of that has to do with the relationship that you have prior to coming into a situation like that. If you have built a strong relationship with your partner and you rely on each other for strength, it's completely different than if you're married and you're there, but you have, other places that you seek that comfort or so on. And that happens a little bit anyway. But as far as the resentment, there wasn't really anything there. I think especially with the miscarriages, it affected me, but it's harder for a man to connect with that child until it's there, until it's physically there. And so I don't think it affected me, obviously, and taking care of the household and so on, but I don't think it affected me in the same way as Oliver did because of the situation. So I think it's easier and quicker for a man in that case to get over a miscarriage type situation than it is once a baby's there.
And you've had both experiences. So this is a really interesting insight that you're able to provide, because it sounds like on the one hand, the miscarried baby is almost theoretical for your experience. but it's very, very real for your wife who's feeling the effects of pregnancy and then,
Oh, absolutely.
Experiencing the whatever has to be done in order to, free the uterus of that baby. So, Daree, how did the difference in how you related to the miscarriage pregnancies affect your interactions with him, or did it?
No, I appreciated that he was my rock. One thing that he did really well was that he acknowledged that I was sad and it was okay to be sad. And he let me be sad as long as I needed to be sad. He held me when I needed to be held. He cried with me in the shower if I needed to do that. Whatever had to happen. I did a lot of crying in the shower. The shower is a great place to cry. It just, especially when you have other kids, when you have kids, you have things that you need to do that privately sometimes and just let it out. And that's like the best place for me. And I know a lot of other people said that too, but just, he would hold me. He would, it felt like he held me together. Like when I felt like I was crumbling, we have a really blessed relationship in that we were really good friends for 7 years before we got together. And then we were married, 6 months later? So we've been best friends for a really long time. And then we were friends for since our freshman year of high school. So.
Wow. So you really know what you're talking about that foundation you had in your relationship that goes way back to those developmental years. Mm-hmm. That's really remarkable. Where do you both feel like where did this come from, this ability to come together? I'm thinking specifically, Adam, how did you know that she needed to be held and that you were to hold her? Did you have a good experience? Did you have a good example in your life that taught you that? Or was it the opposite example?
Probably the opposite. I grew up in a household where my father was military, mm-hmm. and I guess that doesn't play as much because I was military too, and we got married. But so just
but
that,
there's a culture there.
And it was 3 boys in the household. Mm-hmm. My mom was the only woman, and in a lot of ways, she didn't express emotion much, mm-hmm. and especially growing up and so on. So it probably just highlighted the opposites, like you had touched on there, that I was able to identify that, and just. I guess in building our relationship, we always try to be as open as we can in communication, and part of that is not holding things against each other, and so moving on so that when something is going on, it's a safe space for each of us to open up to each other. So having that foundation before this, I think, really helped me key in to be able to see where and when she was really falling apart and needing the help.
That's really amazing, and thank you for sharing that. I think men listening can probably mostly relate to your experience with other men, mm-hmm. right? And sometimes if a man grows up in a home that's so austere that it even can border on abusive, right? That just because somebody's in the military or police or any place where there's a real serious protect commitment, right? There's, mm-hmm. There's a seriousness that comes with that. I'm talking about, sometimes if a young man grows up in an environment where he sees no tenderness, he can really be scared about becoming a father and whether he will be able to provide what that child needs, knowing he didn't have that himself. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because I think your example is encouragement that whatever the background, you can learn to nurture, you can establish the kind of relationship that you've had with Daree. That then, Daree, how would you describe Adam as a father?
He is really good at playing with them. Those toddler years are like his favorite, when they want to do everything with dad.
18 months to 3 years is like the best.
His favorite. But yeah, he's really good about like laying down the law when he needs to, but then being tender when the kids need him to do that too. Like if they're hurting, he tries to meet them where they are and help them along.
That's so great. And what's your family background, Daree?
So I am the oldest of 6 children from my parents, and I have a half brother who's older. But in the house, I grew up as the oldest, and so my dog is whining. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Let her in.
Yes. People have dogs.
Sorry, she's just so heartbroken that we don't let her in.
That's right. So the poor dog has been outside the door wondering why they don't get to be part of the fun.
Yeah, sorry about that. She's just being distracted.
She'll just lay down in her bed.
Yeah, she'll be okay now because...
Yeah. Sorry about that. So anyway, so my house was, we were members of the church, my parents both active, and my baby sister, the last one, was born when I turned 11. So we have the same birthday, which is nice.
Oh, wow, that's cute.
And then she has Angelman syndrome, so she's nonverbal and has severe needs. And so that was formative in my growing up years, is having my little sister that needed me. And she taught me so much about life and about Christ-like attributes. And she's still teaching me things today. So
thank you. Thank you. That's really interesting. I'd like to explore that a little bit more, about the different ways you feel like you were prepared emotionally or spiritually before the series of difficult experiences happened. Mm-hmm. But let's switch gears now and speak specifically to Oliver. Can you tell me whatever you can about Oliver?
So like we said in the ultrasound, we found out we were having twins. And then at the 20-week ultrasound, we named them. Mm-hmm. But the whole time that I was pregnant, I felt like I was not going to be able to keep both of them.
You had a premonition.
Probably because, with Kira, we weren't able to keep her twin. But also I just felt I had that dread. But 20 weeks came along and we got excited, let ourselves be happy. Mm-hmm. We named them and announced to our family that we were having a boy and a girl. And so it's Oliver Daniel and Emma Claire. Mm-hmm. And then 3 weeks later, they were born.
Wow. At 23 weeks.
Yeah. So that was horrific. There's no way to sugarcoat their birth. The hospital told us when we got there that if they couldn't stop my labor, they were going to put our babies on my chest and let them pass away.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
They were under the age of viability. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I didn't handle that very well.
No.
Okay, don't move on too fast from that. What does that mean?
Well, I did not accept that. So they were still trying to stop my labor, and I was in full-blown labor.
They were pumping magnesium into her so fast
I was dying.
Her arms were burning and just...
Oh my goodness.
They had my feet in the air. Like, they were doing all the things.
But do you mean you didn't handle it well, as in you were super upset and emotional? Because that sounds to me like a normal response.
Yeah.
To a very strange situation.
So I was, since we were so early, we had to go to a hospital without my OB. The doctor was very crass. He just said, your babies will die, and then left the room.
Oh my gosh. Let's just pause there for a second and have a little reminder to healthcare providers. This may be what you do every single day, but this is not like counting widgets.
Exactly.
Yeah, these are people's lives. The most impactful statement you're going to hear maybe in your whole life will come from the mouth of somebody doing their daily work.
Exactly. Yeah, we were very unimpressed with our doctor. But after he left the room, we kept hearing that over in our heads, and we prayed. And so I spent the whole labor begging for drugs because they're still trying to stop my labor and not giving me anything, and begging them to save my babies.
Yeah.
Wow. So Oliver was born footling breech, unmedicated, never by my choice. The doctor did not treat him like a viable human being.
Wow.
Yanked him out of me. But thankfully the NICU team did hear me, and they did take him and they got him stable. So while we were waiting for Emma to be ready to be born, the neonatologist came and talked to us and told us that Oliver was stable. They had him intubated, and that and then Emma had turned, so I ended up having a C-section as well. My worst nightmare.
It's a good thing she's stubborn, and she still is to this day.
Emma.
So, yes.
Emma said, "I see how you ripped my brother out."
She's like, I will pass on that experience. So she turned, and so I ended up with a C-section. And then when she was born, later we found out she made an audible cry, which is very, very rare for a 23-weeker. And her APGARs were pretty high. They were 7, 8. And so...
wow, that is very high.
Yeah.
At 23 weeks, that's...
miracle.
That's incredible.
So then they were able to get her stable. And then they brought me up so I could meet my babies before they passed away, pretty much, in my bed from the OR. So we got to see them, their little bruised, broken bodies.
Yeah.
All the tubes and wires in these little boxes, keeping them alive. And then we went back to our room. I started pumping, and we waited. And the next morning, we got an update from the doctor, and she was like, "Oliver's not doing very well at all. Emma is stable." But we got them through the night, and then she got a call right there and said that Oliver was seizing and that we needed to get up there right now. So we did, and they put him in my arms. We called family, and he passed away in my arms just a few hours later.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that experience. I can't even imagine the heartbreak, the difficult day that was for you. So thank you for sharing it.
A lot of it is a blur for me.
Yeah.
Adam, what are your memories of that day?
Just the shock and numbness is probably the big thing. Going through that process, just, as a man, we like to solve problems, right? Completely helpless, not really being able to do anything, just to sit there. And not intentional by any means, but unfortunately, Daree put me in the position to try to make me choose between her and the babies, if it came to that.
What do you mean by that?
We didn't know what was going to happen, and I was adamant that they wanted them to save the babies, so I made a statement that if it was them or me, that I wanted him to choose them.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That was an option. I don't know why that came out of my mouth. Of course, I regretted it because it put him in a place to have to think about that, and that caused some trauma.
I'm sure it did. And and it's not when you conceive a child and you look forward to the child's birth, I'm pretty confident that is not a conversation most married couples ever have with each other.
Nope.
Right? If something happens during this pregnancy and you have to choose between me and the babies, and yet it's not an unreasonable thing to expect someone would have to actually face if it were a situation as dire as yours was.
Yeah.
So I can see again how this friendship you developed, this love, this trust that you had before you ever went into this experience must have been so vital in you facing it at the moment and then backing away later and saying, and it's not my place to judge, but I don't think you have anything to apologize for. it seems like that would be a normal concern for the mother to have, and yet a completely disintegrating kind of thought for Adam as the husband and father. Like, I'm not making that choice.
Yeah, because coming from the man's perspective, it's like we were talking about a little bit earlier, before the baby's actually there, it's harder for a man to make that connection.
Exactly.
And so your wife is there, your wife is real, you've built a life together.
You
And
have
so
other
it's almost
children.
an impossible choice, because then, okay, if I choose the babies, I have to live with the consequences of that, raising them. But if I choose my wife, there's the potential that she'll resent that.
Right.
So it's almost an impossible choice.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Luckily, that was not a choice I had to make. So
yeah.
we get put in that. But as we move on through that, yeah, the doctor birthing Oliver was not gentle. I was there for that and seeing a lot of that. And it's, again, there's nothing I can do. I'm just there. And so just the shock and the numbness of everything going on, and just holding Daree as I could while they did the C-section. And then, we went up and saw him, and then that's when it was really real. You go in the NICU and they're in those aquariums, basically.
I've never heard it described that way. That's perfect.
It's an aquarium, and you can't touch them, you can't do anything, but they're there, they're real. But like, their skin's not all the way developed. You could see through it. It's slightly transparent, so it's
strange.
It's tough to see it.
Yeah.
So
it's terrifying.
And then just waiting.
Yeah.
And it's just waiting game. So
to see what would happen.
But you got to hold Oliver.
Yeah, I gave him a father's blessing right before he passed, and so we had that connection. Probably helps a little bit with the closure.
Yeah, we had some beautiful pictures from Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. She took some beautiful images for us, and we got some from before too, before he passed. But he, you couldn't really feel him breathing or anything, so it took longer than we thought for him to pass. It was hard. But my mom was there, and my sisters that lived here were there. My brother was there.
Tell me about the support you got from your family.
We were wrapped in love.
Yeah.
But it was also hard. We were a mess. We not only did we have the grieving, we also had Emma, who we didn't know if we could even hope that she was going to survive. So it was a very complicated grief, a complicated time. We were so busy. I was going to the NICU twice a day. We got love and support from all our family, and we had a Ida Mommy group at the time that they took a week and the church took a week, and they fed us and took care of my other children so I could go to the NICU. Wow. But I think after a while, people started to expect us to just be okay and go back to who we were before.
And this is still while she's in the NICU.
Yeah, she's still in the NICU.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, it was weird because like they'd be like, okay, it's been almost 3 months, and I'm like, thank you. Like I'm still dealing with all the feels. So it took a while.
And I'm sure you probably didn't live real close to the NICU.
Yeah, we were about 15 minutes. 15 miles. It was 15 miles one way. So I did 60 miles a day for 4 months.
Yeah. With and Adam, you're working during this time.
Yeah.
Working, trying to balance family, take care of the other kids, because some of them are young. They don't quite, know how to process it either. So,
Connor was 20 months old when the twins were born.
So
wow.
It turned almost into, during that whole period, we're dealing with it, but it turned almost mechanical.
Yeah.
Because it had to, for us to process through and work through it. So, and get through the day to day.
Yeah, we kind of called it our time of just two ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
we like, okay, this is
Yeah.
what happened. This is what. But something I learned during that time was how to be present in the where I was. So when I was home, I had to trust that the nurses were taking good care of Emma, and I had to just be with my kids at home. And then when I was at the NICU, I had to trust that those who were taking care of my other kids were taking care of them, and that I could be with Emma and just take care of things. I knew my husband would take care of whatever I couldn't. And then we just moved on from there. And just it was just a really rough time. But when we looked back on it a while later, we went to a marriage retreat and asked, when was the time that you were most solid in your marriage, or that felt like it solidified your marriage? And we both said when Emma, right after Oliver, and then with Emma, because we found a way to come together even in that time when life was not good. It was so hard. Like we felt like that time we knew we could trust each other, and that we could ask for what we need. And like there was a time when he was jumping out of bed. You want to talk about that? Not
Sure.
really.
I don't remember when in the process that all started, but it got bad enough they had to prescribe me sleeping pills.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I can imagine this.
He was trying to
So
save Oliver in his dreams. He was trying.
Oh my.
And that went on for quite a while.
Yeah. He wasn't sleeping.
Oh, Adam. And then when you were sleeping,
Yeah.
you're reliving this moment of trying to save your son.
Yeah.
So through the day, it's like, I got to take care of work. I got to take care of all the other stuff. And so outwardly, I got to be strong. And a lot of it manifested at work as either anger or indifference.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in that I had to bottle some of that up, and that's how it released.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense to me. And the word indifference is so interesting because I can imagine nothing in the world that you were doing probably even came close to mattering as much as this piece that you were dealing with, right? So
That's correct.
because right after somebody passes away, even this is a very normal common thing that occurs, that you are doing mundane things and thinking, this is so odd that I am driving to the grocery store and people around me are just living their lives with no awareness that the worst thing in the whole world has happened to the person driving the car right next to them, right?
The part of that struggle at work is I'm an owner in the business, and so I have employees. I have that responsibility that I need to take care of them, and it gets into, okay, we just lost our child, but yet somebody's got a small mathematical issue on a pay stub, and it's the end of the world for them. And so balancing that and finding the way to separate that is where I had to have that indifference. I had to close it off.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's really, really a tough thing that you had to go through. And then the lack of sleep itself is so hard. I'm sure you guys were exhausted.
Yep.
During this time, I mean,
and during that time too, Daree wouldn't sleep because she'd be expecting a call from the NICU that something was going on.
Yeah.
Which happened more than we wanted to. They were supposed to call us and check in, and they didn't always do it. So it was.
So then you have the anticipation and you're waiting. Yeah. So this has probably given you a lot of information and insight as to real practical ways a person can help someone in this situation. If, this happens all the time, that somebody has a loved one in the hospital, often with a child, right? But even with a parent or a spouse, what are some of the things that you think are the most helpful ways that someone can help a person going through the kind of crisis that you were experiencing, this extended crisis?
For me, the best thing I did, I had a friend offer to be my coordinator.
Really?
So I would tell them what I needed, and then they would coordinate it. So I didn't have to worry about arranging meals, arranging childcare. That was done for me.
Wow.
I had people show up and clean my floors,
Wow.
clean my bathrooms.
Right.
I'm here to clean your bathrooms. I said, no. Yes. And so I learned a lot about allowing people to serve me. I'm always the server. So it was really difficult for me to allow people to do that, but we had to. We could not get through that time without that. But yeah, my coordinator was amazing, just took care of it for me. I also utilized social media a lot.
Uh-huh.
I had used my Facebook every day. When I left the hospital, I did my update on my way in, what I was worried about, so that I had this running log and I didn't have to repeat the story over and over again. So if people wanted to know what was going on, they could just go to my Facebook page and read about it.
Right.
And it helped me too, because I'm not a good journaler or anything like that. So it has that chronological time. So when everything's a blur and I look back, then I can actually read through those updates and remember where we were during that time.
That's okay. So you used your social media. Yeah. You had people just show up and take care of practical matters like cleaning especially floors when you have little ones crawling all over them, right?
Yeah.
And then this friend of yours who offered to coordinate, that's incredible. What a great gift. There's got to be a story there. How did she know to do something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
It was
Adam, what are your thoughts as far as and maybe address as a man, because women have lots of support groups and they seek out support. Men often, as you've pointed out, kind of suffer through in silence, luckily with the support of their wives, maybe some family or very close friends. But how would you say, as a man, to best support a man in a situation where there's an ongoing crisis?
Probably just show up and be there. Because maybe not in all situations, but at least in my case, what I observed is initially it's I'm sorry this happened, man, whatever. And then no one's around. It's uncomfortable to put yourself in that position. And so they don't. And so just the dynamic between men, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's whatever, whether it's coworkers or any of that, is it's uncomfortable. And so they just avoid it. Oh, well, I'll just go to work over here, or or whatever. And so it just being there and for the support, it would probably be the best thing.
Just show up, just literally just show up, huh?
For a long time, even after that, after the incident, it was probably a good 3 years, I buried myself in multiplayer video games because people were there. So, good, bad, whatever. I use that as a coping mechanism and to delay dealing with the grief, dealing with the emotions that came along with it. But it was a release.
Sure.
And so you could see where men would, fall into alcohol. Right. Or drug use or something for that release, because they need to cope with it somehow. Right. And then a lot of times, because of while you're dealing with the situation or just slightly removed from it after it, you got to keep everything going.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where and we've seen it, unfortunately, working with the NICU and the support groups and stuff she's in, where it'll drive a couple apart.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with resentment that's built out of that. And if going back to the strengthening your relationship with your spouse, if you don't have that foundation to where you can open up to each other without judgment, without it being held against you later on, it shuts a man off even more.
Mm.
And so they'll seek some other outlet.
Right.
Whether that's, good, bad, or whatever. They'll seek another outlet, whether it's a hobby, whether it's just not coming home, because when they come home, it reminds them.
Right.
So overworking, or going to the bar, or, whatever, or when you're there, burying yourself in a video game or a books or something, just to get away from it. So you don't have to deal with it, because you can't always deal with it at the same time frame that your spouse and your family's dealing with it, because you need to be the support.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, thank you for sharing that. This has been a theme with a lot of men that I've talked to, and so I think the more aware we are that every time there's a loss like this, there is a father involved, there is a husband involved. It's really, really important that we continue to support him as well. And often men are just normally not going to know how to turn to really, to positive support. And so you're right. Those examples you gave it's so prevalent. They're driven by pain, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, the
connection.
Yeah. So how did this affect your children? I know you said they were young. How did it affect them at the time? How does it affect them now? What kind of conversations do you have?
Mm-hmm.
One thing we did with Oliver especially is we never made it a taboo. We never made it we don't talk about him. We never made it, he's gone, so we're not going to bring him up. He's always been a part of the family. And so the kids know him. They know the story. They know about it. It was years later, and I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but Josiah had said that he was talking with Oliver, and Oliver sent him to be with us.
Oh.
And Josiah is our last child after Emma and Oliver.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know that he would have ever said anything like that if we haven't included Oliver in our family.
Right.
There's some of the few pictures that we have him. There's one on the wall with the rest of the kids. And so I think, too, it helps Emma in a lot of ways that not to feel like a part of her is missing, because that happens a lot with twins when they feel like there's a part of them missing. And so I think it helps Emma with that. But.
Yeah, she's always known she had a twin.
Mm-hmm.
We always celebrate him on their birthday together. Sometimes I always make sure, now that she's able to tell me, we make sure we ask her how she wants to include him. So she gets to decide that, whether he gets his own cake or if she wants his name on her cake.
I love that.
However she wants us to do that. If she wants us to sing to just her and then sing to Oliver, or if she wants us to sing to Oliver later, whatever, however she wants us to include him, we allow her to dictate that. But he's still very much part of our family. That's just, he is. And we're so grateful for the eternal nature of families. We have 5 children on this side of the veil, and we have 4 children on the other side of the veil. And it just makes heaven that much closer. The veil is thin in our family. We do feel that even though it's so hard, the waiting, but we know that we will be together. We know that we will hear them yell, "Mom, Dad." We're so glad you're here. I have a necklace. It has 2 nests, and they have pearls in them. So I have 2 nests, one with my 5 here and my 4 in heaven, that I wear when I just need to feel that whole circle, that whole eternity with me on days that are hard. We're blessed that we have that perspective. I remember right after Oliver passed, we were in the hospital room, and I was just talking to Oliver, telling him I was going to miss him. And I said, Oliver, don't worry about us. You don't need to linger. You don't need to watch out for us, because we know you have been called home to do something important, and we'll be okay.
Thank you.
I think I skipped the anger and right to acceptance, because I knew that I had that strong testimony of that eternal nature of families. I knew we were sealed together forever, and that we would be able to get to know him on the other side, and that he'll be right here with us, helping us get there. I mean,
yeah.
So
that's beautiful. Thank you.
I think manifested out of that are our other children know that they're not. We haven't forgotten Oliver. We're not going to forget them. You know?
That's a good point. That's something I had not connected before. Wow, that's really something.
Yeah, also some of our kids, it manifested in later thumb sucking.
Yeah.
It manifests in some anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Because they just have this backdrop of a little bit of insecurity that life circumstances can change.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, the cemetery isn't a place that my kids see as a solemn place.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of a blessing in that death isn't scary in that way. We always talk about is death. I always ask them, is death something you have to worry about? Is that something you have to stress out about? And they're like, no. I said, why not? Because we don't number our days. Heavenly Father numbers our days, and he knows us, and he knows our beginning and our end on this earth, and we don't need to stress about that. So we let him have that one. But when we go to the cemetery, they run and they play, and they go visit their brother. They blow him kisses, and then they run off and play.
I love that. I think this is such a great thing that you're sharing.
But I don't feel close to Oliver at the cemetery. I don't at all. So it's harder for me to go there. It feels like that scab's being ripped off. That was the worst day. It was such a cold, yucky, terrible day when we had his funeral. It was also beautiful. When we had his funeral, I literally was sobbing on the way to the church, and I was like, who is going to come to a baby's funeral? Who wants to come to this? Why are we even doing this? I wasn't any place for it, but so many people showed up, and they wrote notes to him, and it was beautiful. People fed us. It was, I was carried. I think that we always look back on that time as that we were definitely carried through it. I don't know how else we could have gotten through it without our word family, our friends, our family. We were very blessed.
That's a really beautiful thing that you shared, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I think you're right that people might not think of how important it would be to have a funeral for a baby, even a baby that lived a few moments. What an amazing experience to be able to honor that life in that way. That's something that I can totally take away from our conversation, is being aware that that would be very appropriate for someone it can be very important to have some kind of ritualized expression of the gift of any person's life.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I remember on the way home, I read every single card and every single note, because I knew if I did not, I would put it away and never look at it again. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to honor what people wrote, but I knew that I would put it away. not access it unless I needed to later. But it was definitely something that really helped me just to see the love like in written form, just right. And then through the years, people that just still show up and still check on me around their birthday. And that's going back to Emma and how she was affected by him. I can just imagine that if I never shared with her that she had a twin brother, that on her birthday every year, she would feel like I didn't love her.
Right. She would feel the sadness, right? That there's these two emotions side by side on that day.
Yeah. So I try really hard to fake it through her birthday, but it's not easy. Right. And I actually I call it my grief season. It starts about in October, about when we found out we were having them, or that it was a boy and a girl. Like I have this, I call it my grief fog, or I tread through mud. Days are harder. So leading up to their birthday is just a very difficult time for me. Some years it's easier than others. And I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, where is this fog? Like, I know it's coming. But sometimes it lasts less time, but usually about October through Oliver's death date. So the day after their birthday I just call it my grief season. And I just accept myself wherever I am during that time. I lower my expectations on myself. I lower my expectations on everyone around me. And I don't expect other people to show up the way that they did in the past, because they have lives too. And I recognize that. And so early on we did all these things to honor him that were exhausting and lovely and wonderful. Like, we used to raise money for the March of Dimes. We did this giant yard sale. It took a lot of hours and time. And that was the way we honored his life. And when I had an excuse to stop, I took it. But I had that grieving time of, what do you mean I'm doing this, not doing this anymore? Like, that was my thing. But I had to just find a way to accept that, and accept that there's a time and a season for things. And that if I want people to show up for me, I have to ask for it if I know what I need. Sometimes the Spirit prompts people and they show up the way that I need. And I pray for that. I just need to feel loved. Can someone show me that I'm not forgotten, that Oliver's not forgotten, that that this time is hard for me, and I need people to acknowledge that. For a while, in the beginning especially, I spent a lot of energy educating people about grief. I was very vocal about my grief on Facebook. I wanted people to talk about it. I wanted people to feel like they could talk about it, their grief from their own losses. And I remember one time I was with my sisters and my mom, and they said something, and I just was like, I need you to hear this. And I had this article from Still Standing magazine, and I just read through it. I said, this is what I feel when you say, at least, or whatever it is.
Right.
And I just went through each thing on the list, and I said, this is, when you say that invalidates my feelings. Or when you say that, I feel like I can't trust you with what's going on with me, or whatever it was. I just went through the whole thing. And then I said, I just really need you to accept that I'm not going to ever go back to being who I was before. I'm totally changed, and it's okay. And I'm okay with that. And I need you to be okay with that. And they did. They love me so much, and they worked on it. And so now when I bring up my grief, I don't get the, oh, you're not over that yet. And I'm not saying they said that, but I felt that from them. Right. And felt that from lots of people. Like, why are you still talking about this?
And that was part of what was happening. I mean, Emma was in the NICU for 4 months, and about 2 months in, the help and the support still needed to come, and it was tapering off.
Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about there.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate everything that you shared. Tell me, how have you changed as a person because of this experience? And maybe Adam, let's start with you, and then Daree, share from your perspective.
I probably the biggest change is, not that I'm fantastic at it, but little more empathetic. Coming from a, all boys household, and then in the Marine Corps and all of that, you're not exactly trained for emotions and empathy and that sort of thing. So I think it definitely helped shift that in my character.
You're softer.
That's fantastic.
I'm softer. She's not just talking about my middle section.
He's softer in that he's more approachable by most people, not just your family, but you've definitely become like just, you're still our rock, but you're not so prickly.
Yeah. And Daree, how about you?
Empathy, definitely. I think early in grief you get real hypersensitive on how people show up for you. And I think through my grief, I've really recognized that people show up the way they can. And that's okay. Like my strength comes from my Savior. So I've learned to rely more on him and accept that's enough. Like, I know that he's right with me and he knows exactly how I feel. And those that have shown up for me are amazing. I have wonderful grief friends who take wonderful care of me, and I'm so blessed. But I think too, I've been able to show up for other people in ways that I wish people had shown up for me.
Right.
And I know in Chris's podcast, when you spoke with her, she mentioned that she felt like she was allowed to keep Emily part of her life because of me. And I feel really privileged that I was part of that journey and that my journey was able to bless her journey.
Absolutely. And I was able to witness that because of being a friend with Chris at the time. That was really powerful to see how both of you embraced Chris and Seth and put your arms around them. And I know to this day, you're still walking that journey with them as they now walk with you in their awareness.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your testimony of the Savior and that role in grief. Would you care to speak any more to how your faith has strengthened or changed? Did you lose faith at any point? I know you said, Daree, you skipped the anger phase. Most people don't skip the anger phase. Adam, did you have an anger phase?
Yes. And like I said earlier, it manifested more at work. I was able to keep that out of the home. I think it would have done more. Not that it was great at work either, but I think it would have done more damage in the home. Mm-hmm. And during that time, it was the conscious choice for us to lean on each other and Christ that got us through that. It really was relying on him and relying on each other. They got us through. The help and support and everything for everybody obviously made it much easier.
Yeah.
But it was the three of us that got us through.
Absolutely.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. This has been a fantastic discussion. I think it's going to really resonate with a lot of people. You've been so forthcoming and honest and real about all of this. So thank you very much. The last question that I always ask is, what do you think it means to grieve well?
What does it mean to grieve well? I think that grieving well looks like finding the inner peace with what happened. You don't have to like it. You don't have to accept it, but knowing that if you could have changed it, you would have. For me, I had to let go of guilt, let go of just wishing that could have, should have, would have's that could have maybe made a difference, so that I could move forward and allow myself to feel anything other than just despair. Just grieving well is allowing the light in and recognizing when the tunnel comes that there is light at the end, that there will be a joy to be had, and that two contradicting emotions can coexist all the time, and it's okay. Bittersweet is kind of our norm, and that's okay. We love each other, and we love our babies that we didn't get to raise in this life, and we love our children that we got to raise, even though they give us such heartache.
Yeah. Thank you. I like that phrase. Bittersweet is our norm. I think we need to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I think through, as much as we want others to take it from us, grief really is a personal journey. And people, situations along that journey can be stumbling stones, but they can also be pillars of strength. And going through it, it's difficult to determine which at times, but we got to just keep working through it and keep working towards it, and learn that it is a personal journey, and it is you can't change it, and so it's part of personal growth as you work through it, and hopefully through that journey come out a stronger, better person at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you. Never giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Never giving up. Thank you again. I really, really have appreciated our discussion, and appreciate you, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.